Everybody, it's Michael Martin. Thanks for being here. So I got a great email the other day, and it's thematic in how the emails come. This one said, Michael, no matter what I do, I can't seem to push through to the other side. And I kept thinking about that, like the other side. Like, what is the other side? I don't know. The person didn't say. It's a guy. But that's because 99% of the audience are guys. And I think there's a theme that runs through a lot of these emails, and it's doing the hard thing. Now, I'm not the first person to speak about doing the hard thing. There's a lot of, all the military guys now who are trying to be popular because of their service in America, talk about doing hard things. Steel sharpens steel and stuff like that. And it means they mean well. So what's the hard thing in your trading that you're avoiding or that you don't want to do? See, when I started trading, I didn't want trading to own me. There's a lot of people buzzing around the office. There are about 75 people in the office. And, they were always talking about the markets and where's it going to go. And the clients are calling this and that. And I kept thinking, like, man, they've been in the business for 20 years and they don't have a plan. They have a plan for what they're doing. And I thought, am I going to turn out that way? Is that my destiny? To be, walking around the office, stopping in other people's offices, like, what would you do here? And so I was just thinking, like, what's the hard thing that's holding you back? What's the feeling that you don't want to feel? Because maybe what you want is on the other side of that. So today I want to explain what that means a little bit more. So, for example, let's look at the guys that you call the legends, the heroes, the market wizards, whoever that might be for you. You probably look up to them or maybe admire them for their consistency, or perhaps because they had outsized returns over the course of their 20, 30 plus year career. So how do you think they got those returns? When I look at, and I know most of them, it wasn't because they bought Google at the Dutch auction and held it at from $85, adjusting for splits. Well, no, actually that was the IPO price through, today. They typically had concentrated positions. They had big positions or they used leverage. And if you look at the guys in those, in some of these trading contests too, and they get well into three figures rates of return, that's not from buying a 5% risk unit and then holding it, right? Because there's no time. Most of it's because they traded large. They were old and bold. And I refute that statement, the old and bold thing. There's plenty of old, bold traders. So I was thinking, like, are your actions tied to what your goals are? Or are you one of those traders who kind of got used to bitching and belly aching, and that's part of your daily routine, right? So you could just stop doing that. Turn that around and say, I'm going to go for 50% rate of return every year. I'm going to gear my account that way. My position sizing is going to change so that this way, all my efforts actually add up to something, right? You can set a goal to make life-changing money so that you don't have to just sit there and take what the market gives you, right? And so think about your behavior. If you were to look at you as someone who would hire you, would you be proud of what that person's doing? But Mike, I'm working so hard. No one cares about hard work. We get paid to execute. I know all about it, because I grew up in a blue-collar household with two Depression-era, kids as my parents. So that's all we did was work. My first job in Wall Street, I was putting in 12, 15-hour days regularly. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. I'm not using my brain. So why did you choose the rate of return that you chose? That's the first step. Is it because it seemed reasonable? Why did you pick that? Because again, I don't believe bulls and bears do well and hogs get slaughtered. I think if you trade big, you make big money. You have to learn how to deal with the drawdown, and you have to learn how to protect your cash. But those sayings are for mediocre people who are trying to sound like they have conventional wisdom. Fuck them. So what is your goal, and why do you do what you do? Here's how this plays out. Well, I'm just going to trade and see how it goes, and however I do, it'll be fine, as long as I make money. That's flaccid. That's not a goal. I would never allocate money to somebody like that. I want to know that you wake up and you're acting intentionally. Is your behavior married to what you say you're going to do? Because if you can't make a commitment to yourself, you're never going to make a commitment to me. Think about that. Right? It happens in dating. What are we doing? Are we, whatever. Figuring it out along the way is a recipe for disaster. Every woman in the world knows that. So do the hard thing. You buy a stock, an option, a future, it goes up. What do? You sell half and raise your protective stop to break even. Most times, in my experience, when a person makes a decision about trading that's going to make them feel good, it's a bad financial decision. You see, we have risk, that's financial risk, and then we have emotional risk that probably is in and around the uncertainty or the risk of loss, right? And so you need to investigate your feelings around that, because I'm guaranteeing you that for 7 out of 8 of you, which is 87.5%, that's where the trouble is that you have a bad understanding of what risk is. You think all risk is bad, and that's not true. So instead of watching your stock go from 20 to 22 with a $2 ATR and you sell half and you raise your stop to break even, just as the move is getting underway, you're decreasing the risk so that you can feel good. How the hell is that going to help you make 50%? You see what I'm saying? That's a feel-good decision. Oh, but Mike, I don't want to have a winner come back and be a loser. Again, another flaccid remark from 1985 or before. Like, how does that pertain to today? Right? Because that saying is misunderstood. The saying existed because people weren't putting in protective stops. That's where it came from. So buying a stock or an option or whatever and then letting it run, right? That's what option traders do, right? Because you have to trade the vol as much as you do the IV. You take a piece off, then you raise your stop to break even. And now as the thing starts to move up, they start saying, well, let's add to our winners. Well, you already had a bigger position that you cut in half. And now you have a legacy position. So that never made sense to me. Let me take a step back and we'll go down memory lane together. Come with me like Mr. Rogers down memory lane. When I started in the late 80s, it was fantastically expensive to trade. There was like Kennedy Cabot, and I think Schwab was like a $50 flat rate ticket charge. At my firm, it was I could get it down to an eighth. I would pay an eighth to get in, an eighth to get out, and the spread was oftentimes at least an eighth, if not a quarter. So I needed 50 cents as a break even on the trade, right? Now that sucked too, because you can't write off the commissions, and I'm still getting a tax bill in the event that I made the $50. Now, when my account was $5K, $50 is 1%. So I had to face these feelings from day one. Why? Well, because the environment was different. I think the environment, it is what it is. Environment who said that? Bob Proctor, maybe? Earl Nightingale. Environment is but our looking glass. So it really shapes who we are. And I feel really grateful that it was so arduous, back then. Not from like I walked to and from school and it was uphill both ways kind of standpoint, but that forced me to think about buying and holding futures contracts. Futures cost me almost $100. That was at 2% of my account. So that forced me to think like buy and hold. I couldn't churn my own account, right? So I had to anyway, you can see if you look at the YouTube channel, there's a tab that says live. Click on the live and you'll see a replay of kind of how I did it when I started and how I had progressive exposure and took advantage of the leverage as well as protective stop movement. So it's like when you don't have a goal, you'll fall into bad habits. Or habits that might not be bad habits, right? Because you can't go broke taking profits. Another bullshit expression. Think about all the trading expressions tonight. Like, write a list of all the ones that you can think of. And just think, like, do they really serve you? Because most of the people who are trying to put out, conventional wisdom, I doubt they're trying to perform as traders as good as well as you are. So feel-good decisions typically are bad financially. So if you're trying to make 50 to 100% and follow the steps of the people that you looked up to or the people that you might think are legends, I can assure you they were not taking off half at one ATR profit and then letting the rest run for posterity. They were staying fully loaded for as long as they could with their initial risk unit. waiting for the thing to shore up, maybe after a second base and a stage 2 uptrend, and then adding more, adjusting their stops all the while, right? That's how they were making that much money. For example, Michael Marcus, who I talked to a lot about trading, they'd have their whole account in one name. That's what, admittedly, they were paid to do. They weren't paid to diversify in a classic CTA style way of doing it. The three guys who were the managers of Commodities Corporation, they were Erwin Rosenblum, the late guy ran Frank Vanderson. He ran Mount Lucas and Helmut Weimar. They allocated the money to the traders, and that was the diversification, is the trading styles. So when a trader got an allocation, which was in those days $35K, probably $250,000 in today's dollars, they were told, like, put the money to work. You don't have to diversify. We're not looking for that. We got diversification up here at our level, and we'll go that way. And so that's how they were able to turn, all those money into those exceptional gains and make 1,000% a year. Like, you can do that. You can make that choice. Your feelings are probably getting in the way of you making better or more profitable trades. Case in point, suppose it went up 1 or 2 ATRs and you moved your protective stop to break even and you left it there. You didn't sell anything. How would that feel? Because that's a choice that you make. Somehow that you let that creep into your strategy. Do the hard thing. You want to make more money, you have to embrace the feelings that you heretofore haven't wanted to feel. Right? And that's how you can become your own legend. And I'm here for you 100%. This is the stuff I think about all the time. Like, why am I making the decision the way I'm doing it? Now, I'm probably using more leverage than you are. So things, when I smell smoke, I have to assume it's a 5-alarm fire. That's the way it works. But, I refer to it as disaster functionality. Because there's no cavalry coming here. I have nothing to fall back on. I had no trust account to live off of. There is no trading 911. I'm trying to be that for you all so that you can think. Now, you might think I'm crazy, but I love everybody who watches this, but I don't care what you think about me. I've let go of those feelings. I have to speak my own truth here, and I do the show for free, and I try to give back to the community in a way that wasn't available to me. So instead of being bitter and having hatred for the people who were expressed what I called back then intellectual greed, I'm trying to give away. This is the most important stuff. I'll never have 1 million followers because I'm not fucking scalping the MNQ, and driving a Ferrari. But that's okay. This is the most important work that you can do for your trading, right? And just look through the comments on the channel. So where's the hard thing for you? Try it. Can't kill you. Worst case scenario, and don't say, Mike, half the time it comes back. That's a bullshit response, and you know it, and I'm not taking it. You don't know the numbers, don't say that, right? Because that's just a hair trigger response half the time. What is it? In my estimation, for my trading, it happens about 1 out of 5 times, where as soon as I move my protective stop to break even, I'll get knocked out flat without having sold a piece and taken some profits off the table. Why? Well, because when I put my first risk unit on, emphasis on first, that's not my optimal size. I'm looking to build into the position so that when it really hauls, I'll be fully loaded and I'll have a lot of buffer below the market, where if it does come back against me, I'm only giving back some unrealized gains. I'm not risking corpus, right? So I've come to have peace around that. Now, they say that it takes you about 61 days to start a new habit, which means it's probably going to take you 61 days to stop what you're doing and to replace it with new behavior. 61 days is a long time when you're not feeling good, which is about 2 months, 2 calendar months, right? Otherwise, it'd probably be 2.5 months if you think about 5 days a week as a trading week, right? So think about where you can do the hard thing. Now, you don't have to come out and go hell-bent for election. Do it small. Just put on your risk unit and keep it. See what it feels like. because you'll learn a lot about yourself. That's what was exciting about, I looked at trading as Vasco da Gama or Cortez. I knew I was going into a new world. I knew for the first time in my life I was really kind of using my brain and not going to be a day player like at the golf course or at the restaurant to wait tables. Go to work, go home with a pocket full of cash. Go to work, come home with a pocket full of cash. Take a weekend off to go to the Jones Beach with my girlfriend, and there's a lot of problems. There's opportunity cost. There's also the caddy master who was at least in the summer waiting to see me, because by the time I got to the good golf courses, I was a good caddy. I caddied for the club champ, so they expected me to be there, and I didn't like that feeling. I liked that I was the number one or the number two caddy with this other guy, Alan from Jamaica, who was a great guy. Don't know where he is, but we had a good time going out in those early loops, 6:43 a.m. on Saturday and Sunday. I still remember the golfers. They were really good guys. But I didn't like the feeling like someone was counting on me to have to be there to serve them. That's not my personality, but it was a means to an end, right? So I have that emotional intelligence behind me saying, the market's not going to be my bitch, right? I get to participate when I feel like it, and I get to sit on my hands and wait. And if a day goes by where I couldn't put on a trade, then that's just the way God wanted it, and I didn't make it, but I didn't lose. Tomorrow's another day. That's a great feeling to learn to get comfortable with. Now, that's hard for you if you're sitting around trying to scalp for your $2 move on your MNQs. But, what is it that you want? Do you want validation? Do you want to just prove to yourself with a small account that you could make a lot of money, right? Because if you're looking at track records, I've turned $5,000 into millions and millions of dollars. I didn't have a choice, though. I couldn't trade small because the small gains it would be like shoveling sand against the tide. You see? I couldn't, and again, I come back to environment, which now if you're paying commissions, it's tiny, right? Right, you could trade $500,000 very, very actively and pay $250 in commissions all year. But if you're trading a smaller account, and you're trying to make your 15%, slippage, skid, the spread, and taxes, at the end of the day, you're going to take home 10% after everything, right? Even if you pay your taxes out of another account, buy and hold on the S&P, total returns, 9.6, 9.8%, something like that. So if you're doing 12%, yeah, okay, I'll give it to you that you're doing 20, 30% better than the market buy and hold. But if you take all that money and divide it by the number of hours you're working, if you're making $10 an hour, then you're getting half of what minimum wage is, right? So then what's the counter? But Mike, I'm learning my craft. Okay, perfect. Then tell me what your plan is to scale up then. Because if you get comfortable taking small gains, you're going to always be a small trader. Don't be that guy. You deserve all the riches in the world. You're doing the damn work. Let the abundance come to you. How do you do it? Well, don't sell half at 2 ATR and raise your stop to break even. Keep the damn position on and make a rule as to how you're going to add. Because as long as you can define the risk, and I know randomness is everywhere. I've read all of Taleb's books. I get that. But, here I am with 36 years of experience. I've had 2 limit moves against me. It ain't that bad. You're going to survive. Don't be afraid of the boogeyman, right? Challenge everything that you hear, even what I'm saying here. I'll debate you. I don't have all the answers. Yes, I do. I have all of them. No, I don't. So, put some thought into that. Don't take comfort in these beliefs because they could be steering you the wrong way. It's okay. You have to be a good contrarian. You absolutely have to go against the grain, right? I can't tell you how many times I got into not shouting matches, but fairly vociferous, debates with Ed and Michael and Victor and Tony Saliba and whatever, just because you have to have your own opinions. You can't be like, yes, dear, I'll do what you say. Like, that's beta guy stuff. You have to be your own leader. This is your bat and ball. You get to say, I get 6 outs, the market gets 2. But know what you're doing it for, right? Some people say, know your why. You're entitled to all the riches. You're doing the damn work. You got the grub stake. You funded an account. You're doing the work. Let your money grow. Or at least know what the number is. And if at the beginning you're doing it just to build your confidence, I support that. I totally do. I think like I've said it here, take a person with average intelligence and jack them up with confidence, they're going to go kill everybody, right? They're going to take over the world. because they'll eventually have the grit and the determination. And that means grit means more than knowing chart patterns. I'll tell you that right now, despite like learn these 12 bullish chart patterns. Bullshit. That doesn't mean anything. You could know all that stuff and have an encyclopedic memory for all of that, but still not trade. We get paid to execute. So always focus on doing the hard thing, because then you own it, not the other way around. And I'm not saying being reckless either. I'm saying, look, if you buy a 1% risk unit, then double it, and then double that, you'll have 4% exposure, right? But that's not on your corpus. By the time the thing moves up, you'll have unrealized gains. You invest your gains into your protective stop. It's not a stop loss, you see? Words have power. It's a protective stop. Because if you buy a stock at 20 and you're buying it all the way up to 25 and then it goes to 40 and you get stopped at 37, that ain't a stop loss. You've made money, good money. So look at the language that you're using and look at all these closely held beliefs, because I guarantee you, you're probably parroting things that people said 50 years ago that aren't necessarily true today. They sound good, but it's fortune cookie wisdom. It's fortune cookie wisdom. The technology, today, is so much, you have so much more power in your iPhone than the guys at Commodities Corporation had inside their firm. Okay, to give you context. So, don't tell me, I know the history. And you might be holding yourself back because of your beliefs. The minute you can believe that you can do something, that's when your trading's going to change. And this isn't about being reckless. This is about just knowing and understanding risk. There's emotional risk and there's financial risk. And if you can define what the financial risk is, emotionally, you should be okay, because everything's defined. Once in a while, the market will come back and knock you out flat. But again, if you do this enough, you kind of have like a free call option, right? Because you'd be fully loaded. You can add to your winners and your protective stops at a spot where, look, buy at 20, right? Goes to 22, buy more, bring your stop to break even at 20. So now your second risk unit, you'll lose $2. The same $2 that you were willing to risk on your first piece, you'll break even on your first risk unit. It goes to 24, right? Now you've got at least 2 units that are in the money, and you could put your protective stop now at 22. So you get knocked out flat on your second piece, but you'll make $2 on your first piece. If you get stopped at 22, and then you have 2 risk units that are in the money at 24. And I'm not talking options even. I'm talking about stocks, could be futures, because you don't know. Don't tell me half the time you get knocked out. You don't know that. You need to know the statistics. Otherwise, don't try to bullshit me. Know what the numbers are. Because at 24, if that only happens 1 in 5, and then the other times it runs up to 30, you're going to make so much more money than you would have made by doing this 2-for-1 thing, taking half off and leaving a legacy position on. What's another do the hard thing? Learning another futures contract. Learning how options work. It can't hurt you, right? It can't hurt you, right? Learning another trading strategy. But ultimately, I can promise you, when I say that the feelings that you want to feel are on the other side of the ones, the feelings that you want to feel are on the other side of the ones that you don't. Go to the feelings that you don't want to feel. It'll make you more complete, not just as a trader, but more complete as a person. The biggest takeaway that I had from being in the Incline Village Trading Tribe was that at that point, there was no feeling that I was unwilling to feel. And that made me so powerful. There was no feeling that I was unwilling to feel. Biggest takeaway, both for life and for trading. And I want you to have that kind of power. Because just because I might be more futures than other thing, it doesn't make, I bet I trade futures more conservatively than you might be trading your stocks. And I use leverage on top of leverage, but I know how to define the risk. So this is, I don't care. I'm not here to debate you on this, right? This is kind of like my channel, my philosophy for me to teach. It's not a social media thing like Twitter. So if you're doing things differently, good for you. I appreciate that you have success. But you probably still can learn from the wisdom of doing the hard thing wherever that might be in your life, right? I personally don't really care how you trade and how you're doing it. It's not the point. This channel is for people who are struggling and trying to figure it out. So if you've already got it figured out, perfect. This might not be a good channel for you. I understand that. So if you have something snarky to say, my assistant is already instructed to delete how great you might be. So I just don't care. If this is about helping people, not peacocking. I have no use for peacocks. So I guess in retrospect, the thing that you can do is, if it feels good, it's probably not a good financial. Not always, but it might not be at the beginning of your career a good financial decision because of all millions of years of evolution, fight or flight, right? Like, wow, thank God I'm going to take off some risk. It might make sense some of the time to do that, but we get paid for risk. And if you're making money and you're in a winning position, I call that good risk. Because who cares the reasons why? It could be good luck, good timing, could be good analysis, could be a combination or percentages of all the three. On some level, what do you care? In the short run, we don't know. In the short run, it's all luck and randomness as far as I'm concerned, right? And I'm a guy who knows the difference. But I still look at life that way. I still look at it and say, my gosh, I'm lucky in the short run. Because I know I'm going to have bad luck too. That's just the way that it goes. I just don't fall to pieces. Now, if you do the uncomfortable thing, over time, guess what? It becomes habitual. And then the 61 days, in terms of making a new habit, is so far back in the rearview mirror, you just live in what was discomfort. Now it's comfortable. You're like, okay, this is how we make big money. This is how we do it. So sooner or later, you're going to have to face the music, because I can tell you this, of all the things that I've learned, is whatever feeling you're trying to avoid, it's going to be there for your entire career. It is not going anywhere. So face it. Sit up straight and face it and figure out what the fear is from. If you lose money, who cares? It's just money. You can always refund your account. Losing money says nothing about you and your intelligence. It says nothing about your ability in the short run, because you have to experiment. This is an experiential business. You have to do it by trading. I coach people, and I've said the best teacher you'll ever get is the doing of it. Is the best way to learn trading is to trade, because that's when you get to calibrate your emotions with your behavior, and then see where your behavior adds up. Because your behavior predicts where you end up. And if you can't figure it out, it could be because your subconscious is running things. And that's where I try to think and create episodes, is what comes up from people's subconscious, and they're living it every day, yet they're unaware of it. Because they might not be in tune with themselves yet. Maybe they lack emotional intelligence. Maybe they just don't understand trader psychology, or just psychology in general. They don't know why they do what they do. I can assure you that deep down, somehow they're feeling, pleasure. Everyone's a pleasure seeker. So chew on that and realize that you get to choose. You're in control of everything. And if you're not feeling good, chances are it's because your behavior is getting you to avoid the things that you need to face. Perhaps not just in trading, but in your life. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time.